You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For 50 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Derek Fassbender.
Welcome, listeners. I'm Derek Fassbender, host of the B&H Photography Podcast. You know, some of our favorite recent shows have been two guest chats with intrepid sports shooters. It takes a special breed of photographer to seamlessly capture both the blistering speed and the heightened emotions packed into sports like competitive cycling and auto racing. These grueling subjects require a mix of intuitive technical mastery, split-second reaction times, and the ability to anticipate, and even more important, to embrace risk. As we put the finishing touches on our video podcast studio, we're dipping back into our archive to curate an Encore episode that packs a punch, revealing the art of suffering behind competitive cycling and the boundless endurance required to make it through a 24-hour auto race. But before we start the clock, here's a quick summary about the illustrious careers of our first two guests, who we originally interviewed in January 2025.
Kristof Ramon is a pro cycling photographer who covers some of the world's most prestigious races, including the Tour de France, the Giro d'Italia, the Tour of Flanders, and Paris-Roubaix. Born and raised in Belgium, Kristof discovered photography while attending film school at age 19. He eventually followed his passion for cycling and photography and has focused exclusively on this sport since 2011. Working under the name Ramon, his talent for storytelling and his ability to capture the atmosphere and raw emotion of racing makes his images stand out from typical race photography. Kristof's reputation has earned him the respect and trust of many of the biggest racing teams and riders, which is why he's able to capture such extraordinary in-between moments and behind-the-scenes images. The riders are always his primary focus, as evidenced in his close-up portraits of racers caked in sweat, mud, dust, snow, and grime. Kristof's first book, The Art of Suffering, was released in June by Lawrence King Publishing. British-born, New York-based photographer Phil Penman has documented the ever-changing scene of New York City streets for more than 25 years. And he has quite a bit of experience in the world of professional cycling himself. In his career as a news and magazine photographer, Phil has photographed major public figures and historical events. His reportage following the 9/11 terrorist attack was featured in major print publications and media broadcasts worldwide, and his work covering New York City's pandemic lockdown is in the collection of the U.S. Library of Congress. In addition to exhibiting at Leica galleries in New York, Washington, D.C., Boston, and London, Phil's signature street photography has appeared in international exhibitions as far afield as Venice, Berlin, and Sydney. He also tours the world teaching photo workshops for Leica Academy. Phil's books Street, published in 2019, and New York Street Diaries, published in 2023, both became bestsellers and have been featured at New York's Museum of Modern Art. Phil Penman and Kristof Ramon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Derek. Good to speak to you again.
Good to have you guys on. Now, Kristof, I know, we have all the work right there. We have the new book. The cycling thing is apparent. Phil, some of your newer fans or people who are familiar with your current work might not know about your past in the cycling world. You had the photo bug back in England. You had gotten a job for a local newspaper after your college studies. But I want to know, when did the passion for competitive cycling manifest itself?
So it all came about from being way too overweight and drinking too much in too many bars, to be honest. That's the New York way. It was also a little bit like in my old world, I was in the newspaper industry, and you either had two vices. Unfortunately, it was like a lot of guys turn to drugs or you're alcoholic. So I kind of went down the second path and found myself at like 210 pounds and need to get fit again. I was always kind of a sports person anyway. So took up cycling, and being my addictive nature, just got totally caught up in it. I think within like 1 year, I was already taking off to like the Tour de France. Like, you ride the pre-route before the pros would do it, like a couple of hours before. You got into competitive cycling, raced. I was the New York State time trial champion. Yeah, it's very, very addictive. I had these two loves in my life. One of them required me to get up at like 4 a.m. and train. It's kind of crazy because I used to do like 95, 100 miles training before I would go to work doing photography every day.
Wow.
So It's a very passionate sport. It's definitely a hard man's sport as well.
Interesting. And according to your stats on roadresults.com, you logged more than 100 races from 2008 to 2017. 9 years as a competitive cyclist. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's just the stuff that's logged. Like I said, it's very, very addictive. And then, believe it or not, like in 2015, I needed to get out of the news industry. I actually took a job working, selling cycling clothing for a company called Castelli, which is like an old Italian brand.
Okay.
And yeah, I worked for them for like 3 years whilst I was building up my career as a street photographer.
Interesting. I want to go to the photographing side of this thing. You know, you have the cycling experience. How does your insight as a professional competitive cyclist translate to your approach to photographing it?
Well, I think it's important that you have like a good insight into the sport, because you know what the certain riders, what they're going to do, you know, when the breakaway is going to go, you know, breakaway being like the guys, like the ruler guys who would, you know, they take off and basically you're gambling, you know, you're going from the gun. I'd say probably one of the most exciting parts of the race, believe it or not, is probably the first 10 to 20 miles. They never used to show it on TV. Now they do. But it'd be like those guys who'd be gambling to get away and try to win solo at the end. So you kind of needed to know who those guys were, who was going to try to attempt for the day.
One of the things that always escaped me is these races are so long. And hearing you talk about that, it's one thing to know the sport, to know the riders and kind of have some idea who's going to be in what position, but just the logistics of it. I mean, in a race where it's not an out and back, how are you positioning yourself? Are you guys hopping on bikes? Are you in chase cars? How did the logistics function?
Oh, it's completely insane. Just the whole Tour de France. So you'd either be on the back of a motorbike or you'd be like in a car. Believe it or not, when I was doing like a lot of the local stuff, I would ride myself because it's kind of like training. So people have seen me on videos, kind of a little bit psycho, but I would do these things where I'd have a Leica hanging from my neck. I used to do a lot of feature work. We did a ride from NYC to Montreal. It was like 450 miles over 4 days. And I would photograph the riders, sprint up ahead, get off my bike, photograph the riders. And it was like this constant, you know, doing about 110 miles a day on the bike with a camera around your neck, trying to document these other guys on the bike. So that was one of the crazier things that I did.
That's perfect interval training, though.
Oh, some incredible. It's like you gain your threshold tempo stuff all the time. So I do that. The biggest worry was that you would fall down and break your camera.
And when you fall down with a Leica, it's not like you just have a little point and shoot camera, iPhone. It's quite an investment you got hanging around your neck as you're riding around chasing.
I never said I was smart.
There's always that danger when you cover cycling races is your gear. Because if you're on the back of the motorbike or dangling from the trunk of a car, shooting riders, you can lose lenses or cameras easily. At home, I have a camera graveyard of 15 years covering cycling races. So it actually exists.
Is there any safeguards you guys take? I mean, are you extra harnessed down, double strap, or is there no avoiding it?
Being on the back of a motorbike a lot of the time, I avoid wearing traditional straps. I use those, I don't know, the R straps, or it's like X kind of straps where you sort of buckle up two cameras at the same time and they can get off of you. Because some of my colleagues actually do it with traditional camera straps, and I still don't know how they or their cameras survive that way.
I'm here and I'm like, okay, I'd be worrying about the gear. I'm not even thinking about the creative aspect. I mean, you guys are either, you just said it, in between 110 miles on the back of a motorbike, you're in an escort car. None of this sounds like standard issue, traditional stand on the sidelines, sports photography. So I want to kind of dive into the creative aspect. Number one, you have to clearly be conditioned to do what you guys do. You can't live a sedentary lifestyle, sit on the sidelines, and run around to get the pictures you're going to make. So are most of these photographers in that kind of condition, or is everybody kind of rushing? Is it like a running of the bulls every time you guys are out photographing these events? Or do you have those standard photographers who are just sedentary, sitting in a stationary position?
I think like in everyday life, there's all kinds of photographers in all sizes and measurements. So even cycling photographers come in all sizes. And maybe it helps being fit as a general thing in life. So maybe I'm a little bit faster being fit because I sometimes have to run after a guy that just won a big race. And I want to be one of the first ones to capture the post-race emotions. And those guys just finish at 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers an hour. And if you want to reach them, you have to run a pretty solid sprint to get there relatively early before the hustle and bustle of the scrum prevents you from doing so.
Mm. And as far as the shots that you guys are looking at, Phil, I want to hear from you as well. When you guys are lining up a photo, I mean, going into any sport, you kind of, as you alluded to, Phil, you have to know the sport. You have to know the riders. This obviously gives you a leg up. You know what to expect in some regards. So you can kind of start putting the story together in your head. I guess for lack of a better term, is there a shot list that you have, or is there shots that or stories that are extra meaningful in each race that you want to grab these moments?
The way that I've kind of always taught myself is like, I look at the way that everyone else is doing it, what they're doing, how they're lining up, and then do completely the opposite to what they're doing. Because I came from like the celebrity world. It was like, why are you going to try and compete with someone that's already got it? And they could be working for Getty, they could be working for AP. Most of the publications, they have subscriptions with these services anyway. So you have to think outside the box. So for me, it was always like, how can I get something different from this that someone else is not going to do? I was fortunate that I got to do like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff where I'd have access that other people couldn't get as well. So having worked for Castelli, we sponsored a lot of the big teams around the world. One of the teams that we had was Team Sky. And at the time, they were kind of winning everything. So, every night I'm getting to eat with David Brailsford, going out with them, and you kind of like got the inside track as well. I remember like one of my favorites was we went out on a training ride and I'm dangling out the side of a car. Don't try this at home, people. We're in like sunny Mallorca, and out of nowhere, this snowstorm kicks in and we're riding through this snowstorm. I'm dangling out the side of the car and I'm just photographing. And I'm thinking, this driver better be good. And I turn around and the guy's holding an iPhone and he's turned around trying to take pictures of the guys as well.
Yikes.
And I realized that we're getting very close to the rocks at this point. But you get these incredible pictures, and it was really nice. Like at the end of it, a few of the riders, they all want to come around the back of the laptop and see what you've got. And then they're saying to Brailsford, oh, like Phil got these incredible pictures of us. And for me, it's like these guys get photographed all the time. So I know that I've kind of done something right if they're happy with it.
Phil, I completely agree with you that one of the ways to make yourself distinctive is either to shoot other things than the big agencies shoot, because you and me are freelance photographers. I think that's important to note. So the agency photographers are there to get all the results out as soon as possible. As soon as a rider wins the race, that picture needs to be out and the highlights of the race need to be out immediately. But if you can shoot things from a different angle, from a different perspective, from a different viewpoint, probably also by knowing the riders, getting intimate with them and having that privileged access that you talk about, it helps to give a unique look that goes beyond the racing. And as you just mentioned, I completely recognize the fact that I know by now, doing this for 15 years, a lot of the riders, and one thing that they're really proud of is the way they suffer. And my book is called The Art of Suffering for a reason, because the lengths they go through to achieve their goals of becoming a professional cyclist, so many stages of suffering in the race, before the race, after the race. The riders themselves are almost obsessed by you as a bystander or a photographer. If you can catch the way they are suffering and show it to them, it makes them proud, because they know like this is what we're doing and this is what people need to see. It's not always just the racing, it's the preparation, the training rides in the snow, like you just mentioned, Phil, stuff like that. If you don't photograph it, people don't realize how hard it is. And if you can show that to the riders themselves and to the people out there, you'll have their full support. And next time you come along for a training ride, they'll be happy to have you there because you sort of document what they do. And they're proud of it, as they should be. So I'm completely with you on that, Phil.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how tough the sport is. Like, I always laugh when I'm watching like soccer, football. You see people go down on the ground, like screaming that they've been hurt. In cycling, like I'm full of nuts and bolts. Like I've got broken hip, broken collarbone. You go down and the first thing you're thinking about is I got to get back on my bike as quickly as possible because I can't lose any time, which is completely opposite. So you've got these guys finishing the race with broken collarbones, trying to figure out how the doctor's going to patch them up overnight so they can start again the next day. It is probably one of the most grueling sports you can think of. And I think TV doesn't necessarily get that across as much as it is. Also, you don't see just the hard work that goes in behind the scenes, like the teams, all the work that goes in there. And then also like the preparation these guys have to do, like 8-hour days in the winter training, like, and you're on the road for most of the year, you're racing.
I think that's what draws me in is the non-racing moments. It is the agony. And that's something that, as Phil said, for the casual viewer who probably comes across cycling when the Tour de France is on TV and it's showing highlights, it's showing a clip of the winner. How much time are you guys putting in behind the scenes? And Kristof, specifically in working on this project, were you putting in extra time in building that rapport with these people?
Oh, it's not just extra time, it's all the time.
Wow.
It's all consuming. That's why I needed to get this book out. I needed to show what I have seen in the past 15 years building up to this moment. Is what happens when the cameras are not there. When you're just in a hotel room, one of the 200 nights in a hotel room those riders spent all over the world. And I am sometimes privileged enough to be allowed in, to see when they're being massaged or having tea or just playing cards or whatever they're doing, boring themselves or getting attended to after one of the many crashes they have throughout the career. And that's what still motivates me. And what I see in Phil's work is similar because it documents those little moments in between. And I can relate to that. I recognize them so well.
It's interesting. Now, as far as developing a personal style, is that you had said it earlier. One thing that stuck out to me, Kristof, was you have these official photographers, you know they're going to get the moments. Does that open you guys up creatively?
Here's the thing. As an independent photographer, you're sort of competing with the big agencies, and the big agencies get all the access in the race. Me personally, I'm at the biggest races, the one-day races, and the smaller stage races, I'm on a motorbike. But like for the Grand Tours, I'm not, because there's more and more focus on safety, which gets more and more motorbikes are getting thrown out of the races. So less and less photographers are allowed to be in the race, which means like for me, I'm covering the Grand Tours from my car. I actually cover the 200 or the 250 kilometers from my car, stop somewhere in between, then go on and hope to make the finish. So that's a huge difference than somebody from the big agencies that are in the race all the time and can only shoot from that perspective. And I think it's extremely important that you differentiate. I cannot compete with them because they're faster. There's always 2, 3, 4 of them at a certain race. I'm usually by myself or with one assistant. So it differs immensely. As a photographer, I need to give something different. I have to either give quality. If I shoot an action picture, I prefer one great picture instead of 10 mediocre ones. So I'll just wait for that one unique shot to pop up in front of me, which is always a big gamble. So it frees me up, yes, because the finish line shot, I know the big agencies will have that, and even my clients can get to those pictures easily and more rapidly than they get it from me. So if I can shoot the finish from a different angle, then that's more like a magazine shot. In magazines, they're more interested maybe in those kind of shots instead of the traditional newspaper shots that has a head-on finish victory shot or something like that. So I try to do something different. Don't always succeed though, because there's lots of restrictions going on in cycling races. it gets harder and harder because there's getting more and more creative people in there as well in the game, I must admit.
We have to pay attention to the technical aspect of photography. That at the core is what really draws us in. Phil, I've had the pleasure of photographing the streets with you, and I must say no one sees light like Phil Penman when you're out and he's taking mental notes. He's remembering what time it is, what day of the week, and what month, and where the light is hitting. So I want to talk about that aspect of the photos themselves. And Kristof, you went through a phase where lighting and using external lighting and artificial lighting to light these images, how light has shaped what you guys do from the creative side of things.
Yeah, it's very important to research the light. Like you can get very obsessed with the technical side of things, but if you don't have an eye for a photo, it's pretty much useless anyway. I do everything manually, even with the sports stuff. I always invested in good glass. So even when I was shooting back in the day with Nikons, I was one of the early adopters. We had the first digital cameras, but we were still using like the old Nikon glass. And then I kind of transitioned into Leica back in like 2004. And even today, like I have all this great glass available to me, but I'm looking for like the old stuff that's going to give me a look. And then it's just, like you said, looking at light. If you don't have that or an eye for composition, then it's all kind of irrelevant anyway. People get very obsessed with the technical, the look of the lens, with the picture as well. Like a lot of the time, it might be that you want it to be slightly out of focus because it might have more of like an emotional resonance with the viewer that's looking at it. Like everything's not so perfect. These are things that I'm looking for when I'm doing my pictures. And I think like you can see this in the book, like it's a beautiful book. One of the images that stands out to me is you've got a picture shot really low angle, shooting for a wheel as the bike's moving and you're framing another cyclist in the background and it's not perfectly sharp. And I think you get way more from that shot than if it was.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, I've learned to become less technical and go more in a sort of intuitive phase when it comes to covering races or covering speed, because it's one of the things that makes the capturing of this sport stand out. We have to be able to capture the speed. Speed is such an important aspect. And one of the ways to do this is to blur images sometimes with motion blur and allow for slow shutters to get at least a feel for what speeds these guys are racing at. Also, Derek, you mentioned how I came from artificial light covering race photos is exactly how I was able to differentiate myself. For me, it was pure experiments. I was completely obsessed in that period in the 2010 somewhere to skill myself in flash photography. And like many people, I was completely obsessed with strobist lights. I think at B&H, they had these strobist sets, I remember. So that meant just having flashes which you can trigger off camera. Because I found the on-flash camera pictures were so dull at the time that I really wanted to sort of try and what can I achieve if I put the light somewhere else than is traditional in this sport. I remember being completely obsessed with capturing light and using flash or natural light, and I even dreamt of these things. It was almost unhealthy, but I think it's a phase you need to go through. If you really want to commit as a photographer or any skilled artist, you need to get your basics down and dialed in at a subconscious level. So that when something happens, and everything in our sport happens so fast that you intuitively have to get your settings right, your framing right, and it has to be very natural to you. You can only achieve that by your 10,000 hours of trying.
I think you see it in your work. You can tell when a photographer's put in the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Phil, I didn't know your work, but obviously before this podcast, I checked. And one thing that immediately stood out was, yeah, this guy understands light and composition. And with that, storytelling. That's what I relate to. That's what I can understand. And as a craftsman or as a photographer, you have to sort of get all that dialed in.
I think it's being humble with your work as well, because a lot of people, especially today, they think they're like the hot shit. For me, the moment that someone starts thinking that they are the best or whatever, your career is over. because you're never going to push yourself any further.
Completely relate to what you're saying right now. That's maybe why I relate so well to top level athletes. And I recognize a lot of what they're doing because I was in a phase in my life earlier, especially one specific period in my life, 2, 3, 4 years, completely obsessed. But if you're not, then you won't be able to get there. So I recognize that in the athletes. I feel inspired myself and extremely privileged to be in the same room, just capturing it. And I love to be a fly on the wall, just capturing what they're doing. And again, it's that hard work. If you can show that to the world, and especially with the social media, if you can capture those moments, for them, it's also an absolute plus. One of the several things that's unique about cycling, it's still an extremely accessible sport. It's open to the public throughout the course. You can go to a start and you can actually get a jersey signed. You can have a picture with them a lot of the time. If you don't go to Tour de France or the biggest races in the world, because that's where access is more limited, but at all the other races, you can just walk up to them and they're extremely accessible. When I started out, that enabled me to actually do portrait sessions with them at the start places of races. And that's how I got noticed, because I did these high profile riders and I was able to shoot portraits right there 15, 20 minutes before they went for a race. And that accessibility and humility makes this sport so fantastic. I love it.
I was just remembering something when you said like dedication. I was in the Team Sky car and we were chasing, they were doing time trial training, which is basically where you've got like 5, 6 guys literally like 1 inch behind each other. And they're going down this descent. And the guy who's driving the car points at the speedometer. And they're doing 50 miles per hour down a descent, 1 inch behind each other in tandem. And you just realize, holy shit, if one of them makes a mistake right now, there's probably a good chance that a couple of them are going to die. You watch this dedication and having that mindset to do that, that's what separates these guys.
It's an extremely dangerous sport. I've been close to a lot of accidents and actually some deaths as well. And it's life-changing. It's horrible. Yeah, it's another aspect of this sport that makes it so unique. It is life-threatening at times.
Yeah, not to that point, but it's incredible to photograph as a sport because you never know what's going to happen. The suffering, like watching these guys suffer on the bike, it makes for great pictures. They're all in. They're all in, these guys. And so the UCI tried to ban one of our kits. Also, what's kind of interesting, especially in the US, is cycling has become the new golf. When I used to race local, everyone in cycling was like a hedge fund guy or a finance. And if you were a broker or you worked for a finance company and you wanted to get access to that guy, you know, the global head of your company, in real life, you would never get access to that person. And now all of a sudden you're on a 5-hour bike ride with the guy, you know? So I would ride in the mornings with like some of the most powerful players on the planet. It was like the tech of cycling, the hard work, the competitiveness. It attracts a certain kind. And then it was the networking as well. So it made the sport grow even more.
Wow.
That's so interesting.
That's a great point, Phil, because I'm thinking there and I'm like, yeah, golf is something you go out and do with business associates, but you're drinking liquor and you're riding a cart and it's a whole day. This is like, this doesn't sound like fun going out, and I don't want to go on a business meeting on a 50-mile ride. That sounds grueling. I'm over here looking at Kristof's pictures and I'm like, I don't want any part of this.
Yeah, they love it.
Yeah, at the same time, it's like a really, really good opportunity to show yourself. If you're targeting a manager and you sort of go with them up a climb for like half an hour, and like in the last 20 minutes, you go like, well, see you on top, and you just up on top, you'll make an impression on that guy for sure, because he knows how hard it is. But then you have to be able to do that too.
Yeah.
It's the social aspect of the sport. Again, the sport is also much wider, and bringing it all back to photography, maybe. I focus mainly on the racing and the top tier racing events in the world. But a lot of the times I go shoot with guys that just love cycling, and I love to cycle myself. And be out and get healthy and be very social. And it's not that competitive, but it's extremely rewarding. And as a photographer, a lot of my clients have a need for these shots so I can earn shooting not pro racing. And with all the skills I know from capturing bikes and racing and angles and stuff like that, I can help a brand give them those pictures. So even the racing stuff helps me to shoot the more common stuff that regular people do, like riding bikes. So
Yeah.
the two are connected.
I think the networking as well. Like,
Yeah.
I met all these people. Like, at the time, I kind of knocked it because of what I was doing. But then I quit the cycling, and all of a sudden, I had this huge network of people. I picked up all the big pharmaceutical gigs, shooting commercial work, because of the cycling network that I was in. The great thing about the bike was people never gave a shit about who you were as long as you were a good cyclist. At the time, I was doing like paparazzi work, right? I was a celebrity photographer. In normal day, if you told someone that that's what you did for a living, you'd be like scum, right? I hate you. But because you're anonymous, you're wearing a bike kit and a helmet, and you're good at cycling, they would respect you because of that. It's the great equalizer. That's what I loved about it.
Agreed. Yep.
It's interesting. Kristof, I want to come back to the book and just projects in general and a little bit about that process. When did the idea for this project come about, and when did you really start putting the pieces together, and how did you go about that?
So it started 12 to 15 years ago. But reality is like a different thing. The thing is, I wanted to do it with a publisher. I printed a small book, which was more like a showcasing thing to get clients and to get my name across and to get to riders and teams. I made a little book, but that was on my own. But I really wanted to make a standout coffee table book. I think it was about 5 years ago, I got approached by Lawrence Publishing, and they were interested in my work. And I was like, great, I've been thinking about it for a long time. But now with you guys behind me, I can actually push for it. But then again, a lot of practical things happened with the company itself. It got into a bigger company, and then Corona hit. So the difficulty was actually for me as a photographer. I asked them, like, hey, what kind of book you think the book needs to be about? And they were like, well, your cycling, your photography. It's like, that's way too wide. I need direction. I need confinement to sort of focus. And by the time I know so many people, like one of my good friends in cycling is a British cycling commentator, Matt Frendell. He's also a very established cycling writer, author himself. And I knew immediately, like, I have to draw Matt in. I want him in because he's such a good writer, storyteller, and I'm not that good with words. And when I got him in and I told him about my dilemma, he said, well, Kristof, it's simple. You need to show what you're passionate about and find a theme you can center it around. And pretty soon after that, I knew that one of the big things that draws me visually and emotionally is the suffering. If you want to make a book, you have to find a theme that connects it all. And that's what I found 5 years ago. And then it was just a process of eliminating 15 years of work. And it's a super hard process.
Did you curate it yourself as well?
Yes. I think that's where my film background and especially my video background helps, because I used to work for television and we go out and I have 2 or 3 30-minute cassettes and you have to edit that into 5-6 minute reportages. Like, no, what's the essence? What do we need? And I've done that for 12 years. So with the book, it's similar. Actually, photography is similar. In a race, I shoot 1,000, 2,000 pictures. I only show 50 max.
I think that's an important point for a lot of people. They don't realize that that's how it works.
Yeah.
You don't go out and take one picture. There's a lot of stuff that you don't see.
And you will never get to see. Because I had a lot of clients like, oh, let me see everything you got. I'm like, no, I'm not showing you that. And that is why I think it's extremely important if you have these high commercial shoots, and Phil, you're much more accustomed to those than I am. I need a filter in between me and that client if they want that. Because I am used to going through pictures at lightning fast speeds. I know what I don't want, and I know what I will never use, and I know pictures when I see them that are valuable. So if you shoot huge batches of pictures and the client wants to see everything, then I don't want to be the person showing it to them. You need somebody else to be an in-between and to mark pictures. Otherwise, I won't be able to be creative, or I'll just, I do need to work with clients from time to time. But I also need my own projects. I need my own pictures to be boss of how I shoot stuff for myself.
Right.
That's the difficult thing for me personally. I'm not good at people telling me to shoot a certain way, because if you booked me, you know my work, you probably know what you're going to get. And the only way you're going to get it is by allowing me to do my thing. I was very insecure about that when I started out as a cycling photographer. I always had this, I'm not really a cycling photographer. The imposter syndrome, obviously. It didn't took too long before I was like, no, I need to have my own creative path. You have to have your own voice. You have to have your own stamp on things.
That's the beauty of your book, though. I'm on my third book now, and it's like I realized that there's the stuff that you have to put out there for the client, and then the social media. So a lot of the time, the clients will come to you and say, oh, we really love your work, your style. But really what they mean is, we like your style and we want to mold it into our style somehow.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, hang on, why didn't you say that to begin with? But the beauty of your book is you can tell that that's who you are, because you get to present exactly what you want to show us.
You're right, because I've shown pictures in there that people wouldn't expect. They never knew the pictures. They were never on my social media, because there's a lot of pictures in the book that are more personal to me and that I find interesting. That's also something we tried. We spoke a lot about the pictures and got the stories out. Why did I like that picture? And that's what in the little captions are with each picture. I think it's important to sort of give that information, to show like, hey, this happened.
Like, people don't realize the amount of work that goes on behind. Like, a lot of people don't realize that because they don't want to sleep on the hotel mattresses, the team will have their own mattresses and they have to transport mattresses to each hotel. So there's like this carnival. There's constantly moving.
Yeah.
The Team Sky hotels, they literally rebrand the hotel to Team Sky.
Every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
For 25 days in a row, they go to a different hotel, change the mattresses, have their own cook work in their own kitchen because the kitchen comes along and stuff like that. Again, if we can document this, it's just the way the sport evolves, and it's nice for us to be able to capture it and show it.
Well, you guys obviously have books out. You have the experience, but the work is inspiring. And Kristof, you said it earlier, it's an open sport, really. I mean, this is something that you can go to, maybe not the biggest races, but there's smaller races that you can go to and just pop up. And if I want to become the next Phil Penman, the next Ramon, how does one start that journey as a photographer?
Exactly as you're saying. It's like, just show up. Actually, show up, because I'm getting emails every so many weeks. It's like, hey, either I or my kid wants to be this photographer, and can you help them, give them some tips? I'm like, I've never seen you. Why aren't you at the races? I mean, just show up. And as you say, it doesn't have to be the biggest races, but go and exercise at the smaller races and the events. Become familiar with the speed of them racing, or find your angle at which you can make portraits or candid shots or whatever you want to do. It's a good thing to build up, because you cannot show up to a team and say, hey, I want to be your team photographer. Okay, show me what you've done. And like, well, this is what I want to do. Like, okay, stop it right there. Like, no, show me what you did already. So build something and then build up further from there.
Get the basics right. A lot of photographers, they want to be where Ramon is, but it's like they can't even show up on time, or they look a mess. And it's just like small little details. Like, I always discovered that the best thing was just be easy to work with.
Yeah.
It's not about you. It's a team. Like, even doing a book, it's a team. Think about that. Just get that right. Make it easy for them. I've seen it where so many photographers have lost gigs and they don't even realize that they lost it, because the client is not going to tell you that they're not going to hire you again. But it's just like, you might say the wrong thing, or you're too hard to work with.
Or too obnoxious, because you're in a high focused area at a lot of the time. So these people don't need somebody that needs attention.
Interesting.
My biggest aim always is to be as invisible as possible. Because if you're on a team bus where there's 12 people before a race getting ready, there's no space for me to work if I'm the one taking up all the space. So I'm making myself as small as possible. Make yourself small.
Interesting. And then getting credentialed, when you have earned the respect, when you have put in the time and the work, is it hard to get credentialed? Is this one of those sports that it's a small amount of credentialed photographers?
Yeah, I get credentials for all the big races and the world championships and the championship. The only way to do it these days is if you have an official press card.
Okay.
And in Belgium specifically, it's pretty hard to get. So there's two ways. Either you start working for a big agency and they arrange it for you because you are an employee for this big news agency that covers the sport. And then if you do that for a couple of years and then you move on, become independent, you might be able to sort of take your press card along because you already have it. You have proven yourself. And then there's a harder way of doing it is just start doing it without credentials, getting your work published, proving that before a commission, and hopefully be awarded a press card because the bigger deal of your income is now dependent on these pictures. And that's pretty hard to do.
I mean, you guys both have such a feeling to your images. I don't look at your images and, like you said earlier, Phil, there's shots of Kristof's where I'm like, okay, it's not a technically sound, but it has every bit of feeling. I love this image. I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm going to get run over any moment. How do you guys approach the technical aspect, being that it's kind of an aside where the emotion takes precedent in your images?
I think that was the point in the first place, that it's not about the technical part. We made it about the technical part. A picture is supposed to get some kind of emotional response. And I think some people become too obsessed with the technical part and they don't have the emotional part. For me, it's like I'm always looking for the things that are defective, like lens flare. Like when you look at a person in real life, to the edge of them, they're not in focus. All right. So if you want something to feel closer to real life, it's not all edge to edge sharpness. Everything is not in focus. Okay. So small things like that. So I do the same kind of as Mark, where I'm using like 75, 1.25 lenses, and I'm shooting it wide open because I want as much depth in the image as I can. It's a lot harder to do, but I feel that you get a much better result from it.
Mm-hmm. And what do you guys do with autofocusing? Are you manually
What's that?
focusing? Are you tracking? I was going to say.
Yeah. The thing is, I shoot guys coming down 70 kilometers an hour from a mountain, and I shoot it at 1.4. So,
Oof.
yeah, on a 50 millimeter lens. And so I have to rely on autofocus for that one.
Take advantage of it. That's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I see these people, they'll have these certain cameras and they'll be trying to do it manually. And I'm like, your camera has really good autofocus. Use it. Mine doesn't have autofocus. I don't have a choice.
And at the same time, it's we talked about in the beginning, it's about intuition. Your mechanical brain needs to adapt to your creative brain. There has to be a shortcut between those two. And sometimes I'll just flip the settings like really fast and like within 1 second, because somehow I feel like, no, I see this guy is now in that position. So maybe it might be better if I go a slow shutter. And then you have to sort of rip through your settings and change it. And also take the risk. I found it much more rewarding to actually technically take a risk, hoping for an exceptional picture, than to shoot at, let's say, f8 to make sure like I have it. Like, well, it's like a bit more of a boring picture for me than shooting it at 1.4.
I was going to ask you about that risk taking, because it's one thing me trying to do a panning shot on a food delivery worker in New York, and if I don't get it, nothing lost, nothing gained. But I mean, like you said, these guys are flying. The window of opportunity is small. The risk reward factor is just huge. I mean, are you going out there? Is there any time where you're just like, all right, a little less risk, I got to get this one?
Of course, yeah. Here's the thing. You sort of build it, especially when you do a Grand Tour, you have 21 stages. If it's pure on race photography, that's where you take the most amount of risk, technically, in capturing that exceptional picture. You sort of spread out the risk by making sure that they're going to go over a mountain range. They're going to go slow. So when they're going up at 20 kilometers an hour, then you can make sure you got a good picture. That means like the next time you see them like 50 kilometers further on, because you race to that next spot and you're just there in time, then you go like, okay, they're going to be much faster here, but I'm going to try it because I already have the shots I wanted from this guy. So I'm going to try it again, and maybe now with a lot more risk. So you build in certainties and you make sure a good percentage of my shots, I calculate risky shots. Sometimes it's gone horribly wrong and I couldn't provide the pictures to my clients, but sometimes it was huge rewards as well. And not just money-wise, but in the creative satisfaction you get from taking that risk and wanting to show it in this specific way. No risk, no real rewards.
Yeah, and the technology has your back.
More and more.
We're not in the film days anymore. Definitely. Is there anything that you've thought when out photographing that this would make my life a lot easier? Is there anything from a technology standpoint that you would want to see in future iterations of cameras, or any type of gear that makes it
better waterproof?
That's exactly my thinking, because on the back of the motorbike, I've been freezing so many times. It got rained up on and stuff. It's like, well, actually, if I could just see better what I'm doing in those moments, or just not be so cold, then, well, that might help. The spring classics, they start end of February in Belgium, all the way up until April. But it can still snow and freeze. So you're on the back of the motorbike for 4 to 5 hours. So if your hands freeze, you're almost done. So sometimes the best kit you can have is good gloves. Or actually now there's gloves that have warming elements in them.
Yeah, you have them. There's a Belgian company that I used to use when I was racing, where they have it's electric battery in it.
Ecoy.
They're awesome.
Wow.
But I would love it if they made like a photography glove.
Yeah, with sensitive fingers, like instead of those thick.
That would be great.
And also, if you're on the back of the motorbike, you're photographing with a helmet on. Imagine this. So you have to have a sort of an open helmet, but you want it to protect you as well in case you need it.
We're going to see a Nikon, Canon, Leica, Sony helmets coming to press soon.
Yeah. Or imagine this, technically. A visor in your helmet that helps you see what you're seeing in your digital monitor anyway on your camera.
Wow.
Or you can focus with your eyes instead of your fingers.
Oh, I've got that already.
Yeah, me not. I'm not.
Elon's working on that.
Oh, okay, perfect then. Then that will be here next week, probably.
Yeah.
In his timeline.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
All right. We've been talking for a while. And before we let you guys go, I got to know, it's a grueling sport, grueling for the riders. What is the most grueling lengths you guys have gone to for an image in the cycling world?
Well, I can answer that. Every year, I probably have 10 of those shots that I don't have because I was limited physically to take that shot. And if you see pictures of me with riders in snow or completely soaked, that means I have to go through the same circumstances to be able to shoot that. And I remember one shoot specifically, it was also on Mallorca. I was shooting a race there and I got so cold that I couldn't continue anymore because I was seeing everything, but I just literally couldn't frame a picture. I couldn't lift my arms anymore. So grueling, because you see good pictures right in front of you. It's also in my book, it's my opening quote. The more horrible the conditions, the more epic the picture.
That sounds straight out of Phil Penman's book.
It's my opening quote because it's the reality for me. It's like, I hate it when it's like cold and wet, but at the same time I know, but if I'm able to shoot a picture, it probably will be good.
Mm-hmm.
See, look at that. I feel like you guys are so aligned. It's like we're talking to the same person. Every time I hear one of you speak, I'm like, wait, that sounds exactly like the other one. Oh, man. Well, Kristof, you have the book out. Where can we find the book? Where can we purchase?
Well, I do have more personal copies on my website, which is just Ramon.be, because I'm from Belgium, so I'm BE based. My book is there, my prints are there, or I guess you can also reach out via Instagram. And on Instagram, you can find me at Ramon_velophoto.
Awesome. And Phil, the Instagram website, what do we got going on? Where can we get the best updates on you?
Probably the most current is on Instagram. The website for all the upcoming workshops, I put everything on there. So like just philpenman.com, and then Instagram, just Phil Penman. So yeah, I'm pretty active on that. So you go check it out.
Awesome. Well, as you guys see, these two do not stop. They've actually been on stationary bikes the entire time we recorded this. That was one stipulation. Look at that. The heart rate didn't even go up.
You heard that?
Yeah. I just heard the whizzing.
Yeah.
As we coast into a short break, let's stand up, stretch, and shake it out. Or if you're already standing, have a seat and relax. And when we come back, we'll kick things into high gear in a chat about the adrenaline-fueled discipline of motorsports photography with Camden Thrasher and Jamey Price. Stay tuned. We hope you're enjoying this Encore edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show and get regular updates is by subscribing on your favorite podcast app. Along with readying the new studio for our first video podcast, we're also upgrading our social media presence as the B&H Podcast Network. Please follow and subscribe to @BH Podcast Network on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok to make sure you're in the loop on future news and updates. And for more on gear and details about today's guests, check out our podcast landing page on the B&H Explorer website and follow the links in our podcast show notes. And now, back to the show. We are back with part 2 of our action sports mashup. So let's jump off the bikes and rev up the engines to immerse ourselves in the thundering energy that unfolds across the surface of an automotive track. In this segment from our April 2025 show on motorsports photography, we plunged headfirst into what it takes to document the many facets of auto racing. Let's start with a little background on our two guests for this segment. Camden Thrasher is a motorsports photographer with the distinctive ability to capture unique scenes of fast action. Growing up in Vancouver, Washington, it was the sound of engines from a nearby racetrack that first drew him to motorsports. After becoming a fixture at the track with his camera during high school, Camden studied automotive design and engineering in college, expecting to work as an engineer or on a pit crew. But the money he was making as a side hustle with his camera convinced him to stick with photography, and he hasn't looked back since. Using a unique slow shutter speed method perfected over many exposures, Camden revels in showcasing the abstract qualities of gleaming metal, bright lights, and dynamic action that are all hallmarks of this sport. Now based out of Atlanta, Georgia, Camden's work has been commissioned by top racing teams and featured in a wide range of media, from print magazines to automotive branding campaigns. Jamey Price is an automotive photographer based in Charlotte, North Carolina, whose motorsports work has taken him to more than 25 countries and across most of the continental U.S. Jamey's photography career began while he was competing as a thoroughbred horse racing jockey and exercise rider. During this time, he completed more than 50 races, notching 11 wins in the saddle. His life in horse racing was eventually compiled into the self-published book Chasing: Racing Life in England and Ireland. Yet, in 2011, Jamey's photography career switched from horses to horsepower. Since he began chasing race cars, his images have been published worldwide in magazines, distributed by sports imagery wire services, and featured by top commercial clients. Additionally, Jamey is a Lexar Elite artist since 2014. Camden Thrasher and Jamey Price, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And you also photographed this sport rather extensively. So I want to talk about the comparison between horse racing and motorsports. Obviously, it's moving. Is there any other comparisons that you can make?
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot of comparison. And I don't get to photograph as much horse racing these days as I used to, but I really miss it a lot. It's an amazing sport. It's a beautiful sport. I kind of compare horse racing to what car racing used to be, and it's more similar to motorcycle racing, where you really have the rider kind of exposed on top of the horse. There's a lot of movement, there's a lot of color. The atmosphere at the races is a lot of fun. It's not just like take pictures of horses, galloping by. You're kind of covering the event as a whole. Kind of think of the Kentucky Derby as a great benchmark for that. And that's kind of what a lot of them are like. You go to a race and there's beautiful women and handsome guys in seersucker suits and big hats and bow ties and just tons of color. And you're there to capture the event and not just the sport as it goes by you once every half hour. So yeah, there's actually a lot of comparisons. There's a lot of danger element to it as well. So it was a really great place to learn and really adapt my skills of sports photography because it is really challenging. Unlike with what Camden and I do now, where we just finished a 12-hour race and the race before that was a 24-hour race. So we've basically done 36 hours of racing before we've even gotten to like mid-March. With horse racing, they go by you like once, maybe twice, and then you wait another half hour for the next race. And you don't get as many chances at it.
Camden, because you were going to the local racetrack when you were growing up. I'm guessing the love was there before the photography was there. How did you make the connection between photographing the races and just a love of racing?
The photography, I'd call it a bit of an accident, just that I picked up my dad's film camera and was just interested in that as a mechanical device that was cool. And I started bringing it to the racetrack, not with any mindset on, I'm going to link these two things that I like, just that here's this cool old camera that my dad let me use, and here's this racetrack that I'm going to all the time. So why not use this as a place to start learning how the camera works, how photography works?
So using it as a learning experience, and here we are today on a photography podcast, talking about your awesome work. When did you really start to develop the love, or when did you start to go away from, I want to work on a pit crew, to I want to photograph it?
Probably that departure from the engineering and wanting to be a mechanic or a fabricator would have been after college, when I just thought, hey, this photography stuff is really cool. I'm making a little money on it. And I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do with an engineering job. I think it was, let's keep going to racetracks and see what I can make of this.
I love that. And obviously worked out good. How long was it before it became something where you were making money? I'm kind of interested for both of you, because this is a genre that probably a lot of people are interested in, but don't know how it works. What's the trajectory like from the time that you really get in and get your feet wet to where you can make it a career?
It can be challenging. Like I would say in high school, there was one or two like local guys that would pay me for photos that I would take. But that was, equivalent to mowing lawns on a weekend or whatever kind of random job a high schooler might have, not something that you could support yourself on. In college, it was a little better. I was starting to meet people, get my name out there. So that was improving a bit, but I think it took time before I could really support myself fully on that. Having a very cheap college lifestyle was helpful at that point.
Yeah, it was pretty similar in some ways for me. Like a lot of the work that I was doing when I was in college, I went to a very small liberal arts school. And so I wasn't really competing with other photographers on the sidelines. Like there was a school photographer, but it was just kind of like a bunch of us that just were students there and had cameras. And I would like take pictures of the girls' soccer team or my own swimming teammates. And so I would take pictures of some of the athletes in the games. And I would make like $50, $70, $100 at a game, just selling them to the parents of these kids. And this was basically like early days of Facebook. And the horse racing was really challenging. Like there's very little money to be made in horse racing. Like it's very, very difficult. I know photographers that do make money at it, and they are kind of like the rare exceptions. So when I was riding, I was making more as a jockey than I was actually selling the pictures that I would take like when I wasn't riding.
What is it life like for you guys now? Like how many days a year are you on the road? Is it a regular schedule? Can you take us through like, I'm interested in like the logistics of the whole thing. Like how far out in advance is it planned? What types of jobs are you doing?
Yeah, so I think the race series that Jamey and I both shoot primarily is 10 to 12 races. And then I have another few off-road races that I do with probably 3 or 4 of those. And then there's always a handful of other stuff that gets added in kind of on the fly. So I would say I am traveling, doing something motorsport related at least every other week minimum.
Wow.
And then I do a lot of other stuff on my own just for my like personal projects that end up taking those other off weekends and turning them into me going somewhere and shooting something else. But I would say it's pretty close to every other week for like a January through end of October timeframe.
I'm fairly similar. Camden and I both cover the IMSA WeatherTech series. There's different things. The schedule is pretty locked a year in advance, like more or less. Like we know where we'll be next year for the IMSA WeatherTech series. They've already released the schedule, but then, I cover a handful of Formula One races. I've covered a lot of other events for some of my other commercial clients. During the busy season, like sometimes I'm not home for more than 3 days in a month, and all of it I'm traveling somewhere for something. But then there's other times of year, like right now, I'm kind of in a part of the year where I don't really have anything that I'm chasing. I'm choosing to be home to be a dad. Like there's a lot of events that I've now turned down or series that I no longer work in just because I want to be home with my kids and my wife. And when you're on the road for 25 to 30 weeks a year, it's pretty challenging. Like it's really hard to have a home life. It's hard to have friends. You miss a lot of stuff. And it's a side of this that not everybody necessarily sees. They're like, oh, cool cars. You get to be around the coolest and most expensive and most ridiculous race cars on earth and stuff that most people only see in video games. And Camden and I get to like basically see them, touch them, sit in them, talk to the drivers and all that. And it's amazing. But then there's this whole other side. You give up a lot of home life. You give up a lot of personal life. You're just living out of a suitcase in a hotel. And these aren't nice hotels. I don't get an expense budget most of the time from a lot of my clients. Like if I choose to stay at a Motel 6 that's an hour away from the track, I'm making more money because I'm not spending that money on a hotel that's like 5 minutes away from the track.
Yes, this is the real side of a job like this where it's not glamorous and it takes a toll on you. And
it totally does.
I mean, you guys are carrying around a ton of gear. It's high pressure. The faster the sport, the faster the action. I feel like there's more pressure on you guys in what you have to capture. Can you take us a little bit through race day from, how early are you guys getting there? Are you guys there a day in advance, 2 days in advance? Are you showing up at the track and sometimes you might not even know what to expect or what your vantage point's going to be?
Usually I'm arriving probably the day before stuff is really going to start to get myself set up, get myself ready. If it's a venue that I've not been to, I will take time to walk around the track, or more appropriately, walk around the places where we're allowed to photograph and find ways in and out. So I'm not like wasting time during a race trying to figure out how do I get from A to B. So that's important to do. Sometimes you got to show up and just kind of wing it, but as much as I can, I try not to have that be the case because it's not efficient time-wise, and that can end up showing in the work output if it's clear that you really don't know what you're doing. And that's never great personally, nor to the people that I work for.
Yeah, they're like, Camden, why'd you come back with 5 pictures from that session? You're like, well, I got in a fight with a security guard and I got lost. And
Does that kind of stuff happen a lot?
yeah, for sure. I mean,
As much as we try to make it not happen, yes, it does. There was a race in Detroit last year that's in the middle of the city that I had not been to. I think Jamey may have went the year before.
no, I'd never been. Last year was my first time.
Okay. Well, in the end, I thought it was an awesome place, but being in the middle of a city and not like a real racetrack, there's a lot of things where you might think, oh, this parking garage is going to be cool to shoot from. And you spend 20 minutes walking there and there's a fence like between you and the door to get to the parking garage. And then you realize, oh, well, I actually would have had to go on the opposite side and come around. And that's like another 30 minutes to accomplish that.
And by this time, the session had started, and you're like,
Yeah, I
great.
just wasted most of my time thinking I could get
man.
here where I actually can't.
There's just a ton of variables to it.
Yeah, in that case, I did do like a pretty good chunk of the day before walking around and trying to figure that out. But in the end, there's always stuff that pops up, or someone says, hey, you can't come through here. And I have a piece of paper that says I'm allowed to be on the other side, but for some reason they're saying I can't come through this specific gate. So you got to figure out, do I argue with this person? Do I ignore them and potentially have some consequences from that? Or do I just say, okay, and figure out a different way to get to where I want to go and where I'm supposedly allowed to go?
Yeah, it's so much more than like standing trackside and taking a picture of a race car going past. Like, that's the easy part. The hard part is like doing what he just said, where you're dealing with people that don't necessarily have the same safety briefing that we do. And most of the series that we cover will give a safety briefing or where we can and can't go. Like the Detroit race that he was just talking about, that setup day, we call it the media day. I think I walked 11 miles that one day, just walking the inside and the outside of the track, just trying to find like different locations. Cause it was a new circuit the previous year, but none of us had been to it. It was only an IndyCar race, and the main IMSA WeatherTech series that we covered didn't go that year. So last year when we all show up, it was a brand new event for all of us, basically. And so we're trying to learn on the fly. And like he said, you know, a street circuit is just totally different than a permanent circuit, where a permanent circuit generally has an access road where it goes around the inside and the outside, and there's gates to get in and out. It's an established facility. Whereas a street circuit, you are literally throwing up fences on public roads, you know, a couple days before, and then they close off the roads. Like, I remember walking around, and it's like there's still cars driving around on it. And then that night they'll actually like put all the finished barricades up to close off the road so that somebody can't make a left-hand turn and then end up on the racetrack with the race cars. So you end up doing a ton of pre-research for it, but you know, you get out there like 20 minutes before the session, and there's a security guard that's like, yeah, I have no idea that photographers were going to be out here, and we've been told nobody's allowed here. And you're like, well, great, because I know that I'm allowed here, but because you're a guy with a whistle, you're now going to like call the cops and make this a thing. And that happens a lot. And it doesn't really happen so much with the permanent circuits, but when we go to places like Detroit, sometimes Long Beach, some of the older ones, they've been doing it long enough that it's not so much of a deal anymore or an issue anymore. It's the newer ones that you go to where you run into big problems with just access. It's so frustrating because you're like, I know that I have to come back from this session. Like, I have real clients that are expecting real pictures. And if I come back with, you know, not a full gallery of pictures for them to use, they're going to be like, what's the deal? Like, you don't have very many pictures from this session. And you're kind of like, yeah.
Some hard ass with a whistle stopped me.
Yeah. And they don't care. They don't necessarily understand. You can complain about it all day long and you try not to, but they don't care. You just got to do your job.
What are the requirements? Does it vary per race? Do they give you like a shot list, or, you know, what time are you shooting for them? Is there any time where you're like, hey, I've fulfilled what I need to do. I'm kind of in bonus time here. Let me try to be creative and get some stuff from my own portfolio, or how does that work out?
I don't really ever feel like I'm in bonus time. I always feel like I've got something that they've asked for still left to do. I mean, ultimately, being a motorsport photographer really isn't necessarily all about race car pictures. You know, for the first weekend of the year that we do, which is called the Roar Before 24. So we do a big testing weekend in Daytona before the Rolex 24 Hour, which is the following weekend. And that Roar testing weekend, we are doing studio stuff with lights and strobes. We're doing product photography. Like, I'm doing merchandise photography for one of my teams with the drivers wearing t-shirts and hats, but then also merchandise that's just laid out on a white backdrop. Like, I had to shoot oil cans sitting on one of the race cars. You're hitting like different sponsor needs on the race cars. And then you still have to do like the candid people photography, you know, drivers interacting with engineers just kind of doing their jobs. One of my teams needs the pictures of every single mechanic doing their job. So it's kind of like a never ending checklist. And then on top of all of that, you still have to go out and take pictures of the race cars on track, wheels turning and all that. So yeah, it's a lot. It's not just like doing 20th of a second pans, making pretty pictures. There's a lot to it. You're kind of hitting a lot of different photography niches. And some teams and some clients are really easygoing. Like the shot list basically doesn't exist. You know, when they hire Camden or myself, they know what they're going to get.
It's not like you're pulling up and you're working on a freelance basis.
It doesn't happen very often. Like I know Camden has an editorial client. I don't have any anymore. It just doesn't pay enough to justify the traveling around. It's all mainly commercial clients, teams, drivers, manufacturers, sponsors. And if somebody wants to pay for like an editorial coverage of a race, I'm already there. I might get thrown a little bit here and there, but it definitely isn't paying my bills.
I would say that technically, because I'm not employed by any of the clients I work for, in that sense, it's freelance. But I'm not showing up and just shooting pictures and then saying, hey, I have these for sale if anyone wants to buy them. So in that sense, if that's what you were getting at, I don't think that happens anymore. And at least from what I'm aware of, the race series, they always say in doing a credential application, we don't accept freelance photographers. You need to be there on some sort of assignment from someone, whether it's a magazine, a team, a sponsor, a driver, or whatever. You need some justification of being there for the people organizing the event to let you in these places that the public are not generally allowed to go.
So earlier in the show, you guys mentioned endurance racing, and I'm really curious about those sort of long races. How do they differ from other types of races, and how often do you run up against endurance races? How often are they programmed?
I love endurance racing, and I know Camden would say the same. Like, it's so much fun. It's the best kind of racing. Our next race is the shortest race of the year. It's the Long Beach Grand Prix, where they literally race around the streets of Long Beach, and it's a 90-minute race. And 90 minutes flies by. Like, we're walking from corner to corner. And Long Beach isn't even a long one. It's maybe like 2.5 miles long as a track, but getting like from corner to corner, you have to go over bridges and through parking garages and through the Bubba Gump Shrimp Restaurant. You are literally walking miles and miles and miles. And in 90 minutes, like, you really can't cover that much. But then when you compare that to a 24, and we do a couple of them every year. So we have the Rolex 24, which is a big one in January. And then there's the 24 Hours of Le Mans in June in France. And then we've both done the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, which is in Germany, usually in June. And then there's the 24 Hours of Spa, which is usually June or July. And they literally run for 24 hours. And most of the European ones run from 4 p.m. on Saturday to 4 p.m. on Sunday. And even though it sounds like an insanely long time to be doing photography, they also absolutely fly by because the light is constantly changing. So you never really feel like you're just standing around doing one thing. Like, you are running from corner to corner. You are trying to hit pit lane. You're trying to do like all these different things. With nighttime stuff, you go back to the pit lane in the morning or the daytime versus the middle of the night. It's completely different. They are really, really exhausting. Everybody's like, oh, 24 hours isn't that hard. I've stayed up for 24 hours before. It's like, no. We don't just wake up at 4 p.m. and just like walk out the front door and, grab our camera gear and then it's green flag. Like, you're up at 6 or 7 in the morning. You go to the track and there's all kinds of stuff happening in the morning. I had meet and greets that I had to shoot before the Rolex 24. Like, it's nonstop. And then there's a 2-hour grid where there's fans around the cars and there's VIPs and manufacturer VIPs and celebrities. Like, LeBron James is wandering around the grid at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and you're still trying to get pictures of the mechanics working on the car and the car surrounded by people. And then you start a 24-hour race. And then once the race is over, that doesn't mean like, okay, you just go to bed at 4 p.m. when it's over. You have to edit all these pictures. Like, our clients have everything from that entire race day basically within an hour of the race being over.
Wow.
So it's a lot. I don't know about Camden. I didn't sleep during the Rolex 24 this year. I was awake for 38 hours, I think, from Saturday morning to Sunday night. And By the end of it, you feel like you're drunk, to be honest, because I don't drink coffee during endurance races. I feel very strongly that when you start the caffeine drip, you can't stop it. And it makes it a lot harder than it needs to be because you just have to keep that caffeine kick going. And it gets harder and harder to keep that energy level going because then you just get the peaks and valleys of energy. So I just drink lots of water and just try and keep on top of a semi-regular food schedule. By the end of it, your brain doesn't work. It's pretty challenging to be creative. Trying to hold a conversation with somebody, like I've fallen asleep against the catch fence. I've fallen asleep on my laptop. It's really, really, really hard, but it's amazing.
What about holding your camera and all that heavy gear when you're that tired?
Your feet and your shoulders are hurting by then. I don't think I slept at the 24 either. I generally try to take some time either in the middle of the night or maybe after sunrise to take a nap or something, because even 45 minutes helps a ton.
Yeah.
And it'll show in your work how strong you are mentally after 18 hours. It's hard to keep going in the final hours of the race.
Yeah.
If you've been up for 32 hours at that point, it's hard to keep the creativity going. It's hard to get motivated to do something you may have wanted to do earlier, but now you're like,
I'm not walking out to that corner to do this shot. When you have a team or a manufacturer, there's no go sleep for 5 hours and come back. They need pictures, and I'm getting texts all day long. We need pictures from the grid, and the grid just happened. We need pictures of the CEOs standing around the car, and like the race just started. It's relentless. And when sunset happens, they need those sunset pictures 20 minutes or immediately after sunset to make a social media post or a story or something. And that's where we really work pretty closely with a lot of the PR people on the teams, that they know us and we know them, and they know what to expect and when to ask for it and when to push. But like during an endurance race, there is no break. It's nonstop for the entire race day, all the way through Sunday.
Jamey, you just wore me out. That entire description, I'm sitting here, I want to know what you guys are carrying around the day of a shoot. What is the go-to kit? How much gear are you guys lugging?
For me, what I'm carrying around 90% of the time is 2 Nikon Z9s, and I'll have a 35-1.4 from Sigma, and then a 70-200, and then a 500mm prime telephoto.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I have 2 Z9s. I kind of have a variety of stuff that I'll carry in my camera bag. I might not use it that weekend. And I kind of know at this point what lenses will be useful at what races. Like some places we go, a super wide fisheye is just not a useful lens. But I have a 14-24, and I'll use a 24mm in the paddock and pit lane area. I also love my 35. And then I really stick primarily to 70-200. And then I have a 400-2.8 that I use for trackside stuff. And it has the built-in teleconverter that you can flip it and it just goes to a 560 f4. But most motorsport photographers, we use big glass. Like you have to. Like these racetracks are big and race cars, generally speaking, are small. Like you're shooting over pretty serious distances just for the safety of it. Like the Monaco Formula One Grand Prix is one where you can really kind of shoot it on a 70-200 and it would be okay. But most tracks, you need long glass, like 400, 500, 600. You know, you're shooting over pretty big expanses of tarmac and gravel runoff that are just there to protect the drivers, protect the circuit marshals and safety officials, and then, of course, the fans.
I'm interested in the gear choice. How did you guys settle on Nikon, or what are the features? Because we talk about features online incessantly. Every comment section is full of people just arguing. But I think for motorsports photography, like this is it. The gear has to work. You're not out here zone focusing, legacy manual glass. What are the features that you guys rely upon? What brought you to the Nikon system? I'm interested personally in that.
Okay, so I kind of want to like preface that. So Camden is actually a great example of this. When did you go full mirrorless?
Slight correction, I haven't done that exactly, but yeah, I bought the Z9 when it came out. I still have my D5s and I still bring them and I still find uses for when I would much prefer those.
And I'm a huge believer, like photographers have been making insane, beautiful, outstanding I could never even begin to do it motorsport images for, 70 years, like going back into the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and they're doing it on film with no autofocus and single shot zoom pulls at a tenth of a second. And it's stuff that like my mind still can't comprehend how they did it. And it's not Photoshop. It's not digitally manipulated to the modern day anything. Like it was done in camera on film without manipulation. And I still am a huge proponent of you do not need the most insane cameras and lenses to do this job and do it at a high level.
Totally. And some of these shots that Camden's pulling off, I don't know what kind of gear would help, because I'm looking at them and I can't even, as a professional photographer for the last 15 years, I don't know what you did, Camden, to make it work in camera. I mean, I'm looking at some of these.
Sometimes I don't know either, but
I'm like, dude, how? Like the camera has to move this way and then there's lights going this way. And I'm like,
I mean, truly, we use manual focus a lot more than people would assume. Like everybody would think you're just leaning on autofocus all day long. But in reality, it's actually sometimes easier to just manual focus on a spot on the track, especially when we're doing pans through people or through things or trees or whatever. Like it doesn't matter how smart the camera is. If you're staring at a big clump of trees or something and all you see is leaves, but as you're following a car going past these trees and you can see the car just every so often as it goes past, it doesn't matter how good your autofocus is, it's still going to grab a leaf at some point. It's going to be like, oh, you want a nice picture of a tree? Here you go. So we'll manual focus on the track. And you're shooting at f/22 because you don't need to be doing panning at f/2.8. Like it doesn't help. It actually makes it much harder to pan at wide open apertures. So we'll stop down to like f/22 or f/20 in the middle of the day, focus on a spot on the track, and your depth of field now is several hundred feet. Pretty much everything is going to be in focus if you didn't pan it. But then as soon as you start panning the car without autofocus, you won't see the trees. The camera won't grab the tree leaves. You'll get the picture you want, and you don't need car autofocus tracking. You don't need the latest and greatest stuff. You just need a camera that can manual focus.
Jamie, just keep talking. I'm taking notes over here. I'm trying to steal all these industry secrets. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think those are the images that really stand out. It's the dimension and the texture and the layering of the pans, the composition on some of these more one-dimensional types of pans where it's like the colors are just perfect and it's a car and then there's layered colors dragged, but then these multi-dimensional looks of lights cutting across and, like you said, trees and people in the foreground makes it so interesting.
And they're a lot of fun to do. And honestly, they are the kind of pictures that you don't need credentials to go make. Like at Sebring, I went and stood for almost 3 hours just in fan areas, taking pictures through people, through chair legs, umbrellas, just people standing there watching the race. And people like look at you with this weird look. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you like behind this hill? You can't even see the cars. I'm like, no, but I can see the cars. You just don't know what I'm doing. You don't need credentials to do these cool, crazy, wacky things that Camden and I and other people do. Like it's a lot of fun, and you can go find really interesting compositions and ways to shoot a race without credentials, and you don't need to be standing right next to the track, with a photo hole in the catch fence. You could go do some cool stuff with trees and people and buildings, and it's fun.
What about stuff like weather and atmospheric effects?
It's hard. I mean, it's not fun when you're actually out there like standing in the rain, but the pictures are awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with that 1,000%. It's not nice to take all this super expensive gear that we rely on and then have a bunch of water dumped on it and have it fail. And all the camera covers that you want, they generally make stuff really hard to operate. But when it's a rainstorm in the middle of the day in Florida, what comes out of that visually, there's a lot of potential payoff from those conditions, from fog, from crazy clouds. One year at Sebring, supposedly some farmer like set fire to his field, and it looked like something straight out of...
It was like Tron.
Yeah, Tron, or like the most recent Blade Runner movie, where it was just like totally smoked in at sunrise, just this orange.
It was insane.
It was really cool, and it's something that'll,
we'll never get it again.
But I mean, those are those moments that personally I live for, that kind of interesting stuff
Like when you get a big rainstorm, not every place is the same when it comes to rain. Like some of the places that you go and make these epic rain shots, you would never, ever, ever go stand there during the day when it was completely dry, because it is the most boring picture you've ever seen in your life. But then you add a huge torrential downpour and it becomes the coolest place you've ever stood in your entire life. And you just have these 30, 40-foot rooster tails coming off the back of these cars. And there's these big Florida raindrops. And, we're just standing there all laughing. And I remember looking at Camden and he has this big grin and like a big thumbs up. So like you get those moments where it's really, really fun, but then they red flag it because it's too much water and the cars can't even stay on the track, even with wet tires. I love the environmental stuff where you can't control it.
Are you beating up the gear?
I had a lens go down from that rainstorm. Like there was a couple of years ago where we had one race. It was Petit Le Mans, which is a 10-hour race we do in October. And I think it rained for
I think it rained for 6 or 7 hours and they finally just said it's too much and stopped it early.
I'm pretty sure we all had camera gear break from that. Like if you didn't have a camera or lens break in that, you weren't trying hard enough. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think we both look at it as their work tools. It's like a hammer to a carpenter. Yes, it's a very expensive hammer, but as long as the glass is in good condition for me, I don't really care how the outside looks. My camera is the same as Camden, just get beat up. You're putting them down in dust and dirt, and you can't bubble wrap this stuff in our job because that will take away from your ability to shoot. Like you got to sometimes throw it on the ground because something's happening in front of you that you need to capture right now. Some of the street circuits are really hard because you're walking around and there's just no way to get from A to B very easily. So you're rubbing up against concrete walls and stuff gets banged around. But like Camden, I remember a couple of years ago at one race, he broke a filter, it shattered in his pocket or something. And he was like, whatever, I'm going to put this on my lens. And he made some really, really cool stuff on pit lane at night, I think. And it's like the same kind of stuff that people are now paying to do with these weird, wacky lenses and filters that have a split glass frame in it. Like Camden did it because he just had like a piece of broken glass in his pocket. Now he's like, whatever, I'm just going to put it back on my lens. And
made some cool flares with the cracks in the glass. I mean, it was cool for a little bit and then it got a little too much, but
I think you should market a whole series of filters like that,
Just stuff I've stomped on.
The Camden Thrasher
Camden's
series.
broken filters.
Take it another level. Forget the filter. Just smash the front element of the glass.
I still have all the old stuff that I've broken sitting around. Like if I ever need stuff for like a remote camera setup, I've kept it around. Generally, I've never used it, but maybe that's my new revenue stream is broken camera equipment.
Jamey, I got to ask you about this technique on your website. I've never seen anyone hold the front of the lens hood. I mean, you got a chungus of a lens on, but were you doing a panning shot? Is that something you do regularly or?
Yeah, I mean, it's just how I hold the lens. I have a pretty large following on TikTok, which is where it kind of started. And somebody was like, what kind of idiot holds his fingers inside the lens hood? And you can't see it. Like,
what is it, like a 600 millimeter?
Anything above a 200 millimeter, you can pretty much put your fingers all the way in it. And when you're shooting at f2.8, you can't see anything because it's a rectangular sensor inside of a circular lens hood. And there's going to be dead zones where the sensor just doesn't see what's happening in the corner of the lens hood. And it's looking so far past it anyway that it doesn't see it. Like one of the techniques that I kind of like to use is when I'm shooting backlit, like late afternoon, I'll have like a water bottle in my belt bag and I'll stick the water bottle inside the corner of the lens hood, just like on a corner, like deep in it. And you can create some really cool bokeh and light refractions with it. I literally have an entire water bottle sitting inside the lens hood and you can do cool stuff with it. Like the only time I've ever seen my fingers show up is my wedding wing will make a weird refraction if the light catches it the wrong way when I'm shooting backlit. But if you're shooting pretty much at any aperture and your fingers are in the corner of it, you can't see it.
I am interested because I love panning and I think that's something that really sets some of these images apart. I'm interested, are there settings or go-to techniques that you guys do to increase the probability of nailing these shots? I see you're using monopods. How standard is the use of monopods, tripods, and then what techniques are you guys regularly relying upon?
Pretty much everyone, if they're on like a 4, 5, 600, is going to have that on a monopod, at least because it's just annoying to carry that around without.
It's hard to like carry it. You can do it. I have handheld my 400 or 500 when I did a supercross race because there's so much vertical movement.
Yeah.
It's actually a detriment to have a monopod, but it's too much to carry like handheld for a minute.
I do the same when I shoot aviation for the same reason that a monopod is great when the motion is basically locked on the horizon, which is how cars operate, but is not how helicopters and airplanes operate. So in those cases, I handhold it, but at the racetrack, 100% of the time, unless something weird happens, the 500 is on a monopod. And I use it on the 70 to 200 frequently also, not all the time, because it does help in some scenarios, although that lens is sort of small enough where it's not genuinely needed all the time.
I have a slightly different technique than Camden does with my 70 to 200. I feel like you use your monopod more than I do with a 70 to 200, but it's really only when we're doing some stupidly slow pan. I'm not talking like an 80th of a second or a 40th of a second. Like it's when we're trying to do like a 10th of a second or lower.
I'll often use the monopod not extended to the ground, but just as a little bit of extra weight hanging from the 70 to 200, just to dampen some of like your hand movement or your body movement.
Interesting. And Jamey, you talked about, you have to have the right speed and you got to go right with the cars, which I'm guessing can be pretty damn hard when it's race cars. You're not panning a guy on a bicycle. Is there a range that you guys know to go to and lock in on?
If I go to a corner, I'll start with something that's pretty safe. Like one of my clients has a request every weekend that they need like a 1/200th pan, which for us is not really panning. It's just following the car, click, click, click. It's not hard, but they need like a sharp end-to-end shot for sponsor stuff. And then once I do that, then I'll go to like a 60th of a second. And that's kind of where my safe zone is. And then just work down from there. But you can't use the same formula for every single corner because there's some corners where the cars are too close and your relative speed to the car. It's like if you were watching, let's just say an air show, for example, if a plane is really far away from you, even though it's doing close to Mach 1, it doesn't have the same relative speed as it does when it flies directly over top of you. And it's the exact same with race cars. When they're on top of us, a slow shutter speed pan can be like 100th of a second. Where if you go to another corner where the cars are much farther away, 100th of a second, it looks like the car is barely moving. So you really have to know what corner you're at, what picture you're trying to make, and what your desired result is going to be. And sometimes the result that you get is very different than what you think it's going to be. It depends on so many variables.
Another thing to point out, similar to what Jamey just said, is that if you're trying to smoothly track a vehicle and you're in the inside of a giant steady radius corner, it's going to be going the same speed as far as you're concerned for a long time. But if you're in their braking zone, they're going to be slowing down. So as you're tracking them from one picture to another, their speed is changing. So like we have to be mindful about that and try to anticipate when they're going to hit the brakes to slow down our speed that we're moving the camera a little bit. And I've noticed sometimes where I don't think about that and I'm wondering why these seemingly simple photos to accomplish are not working. And then I think, oh yeah, I've started taking these photos right as they're hitting the brakes. And that's like a significant speed that they're losing that I'm not accounting for. Same thing, accelerating out of a corner or stuff coming towards you versus going away. There's a difference in their apparent speed and angular velocities that you kind of need to be aware of. And that's something that comes after doing this for a bunch of years and taking a million photos of it.
Some great information. Now, we talked about what the day of is like with offloading the images and getting the images into the people who are hiring you. I'm interested in the usage of the images and more specifically how you guys are allowed to use the images. Jamey, you talked about Camden uploading stuff to Instagram. Do you guys have the ability to use your photos, and when are you able to use the photos for your own personal use, or is there any limits on how you can use them?
It depends on the series we're in or what we're photographing. the organizers often have quite widely varying limits that they claim on what we can do with it, and whether they pretend to claim ownership of these images or not, which is, I think, a big discussion. But personally, I try to, at least for my clients, say that yes, they have the right to use these images for whatever it is that they need, but also I retain control of them for my own purposes, as long as that isn't really conflicting with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. Like, I had a client come to me a couple of years ago and try and hire me for a big race, and they wanted full copyright ownership of the images. And I said, well, I'm happy to do that, but you're not going to like the number. If I no longer have the ability to do what I need to do with these pictures, even though I may never do anything with them, I'm going to charge you appropriately for it. And I ended up not getting that client for that race. So same as Camden, even to my biggest manufacturers, I have the copyright ownership of the images. They are licensing them for their needs, which is, to be honest with you, mainly social media and press release type stuff. It's not very often that we get stuff that ends up on billboards or anything like that. But it gets kind of tricky with some of the series.
Okay. And in the hybrid world now of video, do you guys dabble in that? I mean, Jamey, you said you had a TikTok. Are you creating video content for your clients?
No, I don't do any video content for any of my clients. The video stuff within racing series gets really complicated just with the commercial rights, broadcast rights. It just gets really, really complicated the second you try and make real video footage for those teams. But more personally, I'd rather be like kind of good at photography than like very, very average at photography and videography. I'm already like so strung out on weekends just with my own time. Like, I might not sleep very much on a race weekend just because of the amount of time I'm working and editing pictures and day-to-day relations with clients. Adding another layer on top of that, I don't bother with. And there's other people that do it much, much better than I do. So I'd rather be just a photographer and then recommend people to do videography work. Like some of my friends are videographers, I'll recommend them to do work. But I also do enjoy doing a lot of educational content on YouTube. Like I do long form YouTube videos, just kind of vlogs, day in the life type stuff. I've done a lot of educational TikToks, like what our world kind of looks like as a photographer, because it's a different side of racing that people don't necessarily get to see. But I don't do video for my clients.
I would agree with basically everything Jamey said. I've had people ask me about video before, and it is something I'm interested in, but for the most part, I'm not done with photography yet to just jump into video. An early answer for why I didn't do video was that I didn't have cameras capable of doing reasonable video, which is not true now. The mirrorless cameras are actually really great at video, but I'm not interested in trying to divert like a bunch of my creativity towards something else that will take away from the photography aspect.
Mm. And if you guys had to give a piece of advice to someone out here who was looking to become a credentialed motorsports photographer, what piece of advice would you give?
I would say try and spend as much time as you can at any race you can get to, just to be familiar with how it works, how to operate a camera, build up a body of work that you can show to someone that's like, hey, this is what I can do. This is why you should hire me, or this is why you should let me into your event organization as a member of the media. Because without that, you really don't have any justification for why someone should let you do that.
Yeah, I echo all of that. Like, I get asked a lot, how do you become a Formula One photographer? How do you become a motorsport photographer? And the answer that pretty much all of us have used, with very few exceptions, is we just started going to races as fans. And you bring a camera. We're really lucky in motorsports in general, is in that they're very welcoming and they're very open to fans bringing cameras. Like, you can't say that about golf. You can't say it about the Masters. Like, you can't even bring your phone into Augusta National. You can't bring a camera with a 400 millimeter lens into the Super Bowl. You can't bring a camera into an NBA game. You can't bring it to anything. And with the exception being motorsport. So you don't build a portfolio by getting credentials. You build a portfolio by going to races as a fan, bringing your camera, making cool pictures from fan areas, tell stories, do something different than the 20,000 other people that are in our DMs every week that are like, hey, I want to do this, like hire me. And it's like, you don't even have a picture of your car on your Instagram profile. That doesn't tell me how talented you are at a racetrack. And that's really the only way to do it. Is you have to go to these events with your camera and don't use the I don't have credentials excuse not to make cool pictures. IndyCar has no lens limitations. Go rent a 400 or 500 millimeter lens and you can bring it into the track and make cool pictures. And really the most important part is just being around and being a personality that other people start to get to know, because it's not just about your pictures. Like the biggest and best clients I have really didn't come from my perceived talent with a camera. You develop relationships, and those relationships will last a lot longer than your pictures will. And those are the kind of things that'll get you in the door, but keep you in the door for a much longer period of time. But you have to start just by going, because there's no other way to do it. There's no school for it. There's no degree program for it. Like you either go or you don't.
If there was a degree program for it or any kind of schooling, I would say any sort of business schooling knowledge that you can gain would be important, because that's a huge side of this, as it would be for any person having photography as a job. Personally, I didn't and still really don't know anything about, and I think it's a negative aspect of how I have ended up in this field. It would have been smarter if I had realized this is what I wanted to do in college, learn how businesses operate, how to make a successful business, because that's a huge part of doing this and making it last, and trying to figure it out on the fly. That's actually very tough.
Marketing and business are really the only things that I would recommend. Like photography school, I'm not a big proponent of, because there's not very many of us working in motorsports anyway that ever went to photography school or any kind of journalism school. There's nothing that they're going to teach you that you can't learn by going to a racetrack and actually doing. The rest of it is the art of running any business, because it's just a business. I have a product that needs to be sold to people that want a product, and I have to figure out which of those people is right for me as a customer.
I love that. Such great advice.
So it's an amazing time of year where it's, there's a lot of business, a lot of work, it's good money, but the travel is hard. And by the time we get to like July, you're kind of ready for a vacation, because it's pretty challenging.
Yeah, June to August ends up being a super busy time that can often be nearly nonstop for a couple months.
I love it. We're going to have to follow along. Where can our listeners find more of your work?
Most of my stuff is on my Instagram. It's just at Camden and Thrasher, my full name. That's where I post most of my personal stuff at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm Instagram. I'm the social media whiz, I guess. I'm on Threads, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, all of it at Jamey Price Photo.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you guys. This has been an awesome conversation. You guys really opened up the world of racing and motorsports photography for me personally, so I can only imagine that all of our listeners out there are sharing some of the same thoughts. I want to thank you guys again for your time, your expertise. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I really, truly love the racing world. And if you've ever thought about coming out to a race, you should definitely do it. You're not going to be the only one with a camera. It's like kind of being part of a photography club, but you're all there to experience and see a race.
So that's a wrap on our Action Sports Photography Encore, featuring competitive cycling shooters Phil Penman and Kristof Ramon, and motorsports photographers Camden Thrasher and Jamey Price. As always, thanks to our listeners for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed these abridged versions of the shows we've featured. But if you'd like to take a deeper dive into either of the full episodes, you'll find the links in our podcast show notes. And if you find yourself creatively inspired, we'd encourage you to heed Jamey's advice. Grab your camera and find the nearest racetrack or road circuit, then push the boundaries of risk and reward for your chance at some awesome photo ops. As you've already heard, we've got lots of exciting plans ahead in our impending switch to video podcasts. To make sure you're in the loop on future news and updates, please subscribe and follow at BH Podcast Network on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. For now, you can also find us on the Explorer blog, where we post photos from our guests along with the show notes. I'm your host, Derek Fassbender. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Our technical producer and video editor is Peter Maziars. And our executive producer is Dana Glidden. On behalf of us all, thank you so much for tuning in today.